Alright guys, here we are. It's been a while since I've made my last Project White Fang video and just been super busy. We did a lot this summer with the kids, a lot of vacation. But as you can see, we're making some progress. I got my trailer. Today, White Fang's leaving to go down and get the roll cage put in. It's a company down in Long Beach that I found that's willing to do the work. So I hope they do a good job. I'll pick this video back up when we get down there, talking with the guys. We'll see what kind of work they do. So far, so good from the stuff online. I'm only going off their website. But they say they can handle the job. It should be pretty reasonable. And as you can see, I've kept this pretty gutted. I don't have the front end back on. I've stripped it back down. I want to make sure that when I put this car back together, that it's done right. So I'm going to make sure I do all the little details needed. That the inside is... Here, hand me the camera real quick, cameraman. As you can see, it is back down to basics. I have the seat, the dash end, but otherwise the back is empty so that my roll cage will be put in the way I need it. While it's gone, follow me, cameraman. There goes the little muskrat hiding. While it's gone, I'll finish preparation on the Cobra engine. I'll get the transmission, clutch, all that stuff in. Secondly, as I picked up a spare cage, as you know, the rear end in Project White Fang is an IRS. This is a spare cradle. I'm going to send this out to Kenny Brown. They're going to re-engineer all the mounting points for the control arms. They're going to hard mount this. There will no longer be a bushing. It will be directly attached to the chassis. I went ahead and purchased some tubular control arms for the lower. These will strictly be for a coilover setup. It won't retain the big coil spring perch system that the IRS normally carries from the factory. So I'll get this all shipped out. I'll get the new bushings. So hopefully next week when the car is ready, hopefully it's only 1 week, this should be back in a couple of weeks. And then I'll finish tying everything together, motor transmission. I got my new wiring harnesses in here, and we're just gonna try to get Project White Fang back on the road. Hopefully next weekend, I'll do a tutorial. A few people were asking a little bit about IMRCs, how they work, how can we bypass those, especially when you're swapping in a Cobra engine into a GT setup. So I'll cover that. I'll do a quick tutorial on that. We'll talk about a few other little discrepancies that might need to be done when you're doing a conversion from either a 6-cylinder standard GT into a Cobra setup. So until then, we'll pick this back up at the roll cage place that they're going to weld in. I think it's called OCD Coachworks. So we'll pick this up back then, and hopefully these guys can get this done right to my liking. All right, here we are back finally. The car is back from the chassis shop. The roll cage is in. This is a long overdue video, but it turned out real nice. He got it nice and tucked for me. This is only primered. It is not painted. It will be painted black so that I can blend it into the interior. This is just a nice little 8-point roll bar. I shouldn't say a cage because it's not a roll cage. There's no pillar coming down matching the A pillar, but he did a really nice job. I just have it primered. It will be painted black, but I like how it tucks in real tight. It's a little unique system here. You never want to weld metal right to a plate. That creates a shear. So when you see that in roll cages in cars, that's a one-time use. What this will do is, this has a ring around it, which is not welded to the bar itself, but the ring is welded to the B pillar. And of course he's braced all this down there and blocked it all up. But what this does is it keeps the roll cage moving with the chassis, but it can still slightly go inside of that ring. Or I think it's called a strap. Sorry, I'm not a chassis builder. It's called a strap. But if I were to get into a side impact, it's all connected real tight. I had a hard time getting I left my headliner in. It's just so he wouldn't take it all the way to the roof, because I do want to try to get as much of the stock interior back into this car as I can. It's going to be difficult. I believe I will have to take out my rear window. It turned out to be quite a fiasco. I'm not a great painter. There's tons of runs just in the primer. There we go. Apparently I can't open a door either today. Now, originally when I was going to get this put in, I was going to have it come up through those holes. And after talking with the roll cage guys, like, you can't bend the tube. Everywhere you bend it is a stress point. It won't do what you want it to do. So we settled on putting it here. And he tried to do everything he can in building this to deflect energy away from the driver. And so by doing that, though, I greatly inhibited my ability to have a back seat. So this car just took one step closer to becoming less and less streetable. Not that it's that bad. I mean, I'll take the rear window out. I hope I don't break it. I don't want to have to buy a new one. I do want to put a sound system in this car. I'll tell you, I've been driving around that 05 Mustang, and it has really spoiled me. But this should be pretty bitchin'. He did a really nice job. So this is what I'm talking about. So when you bend a tube like that, if we were to get into a front collision, energy travels, it would bend here. Well, you must brace it. Now, he didn't like the idea of me driving around on a street cage with a bar. So this, if I were to get into a side impact or T-bone setting at a light, this bar right here will go right into my ribs. That's not good. So he bent it down out of the way, but he had to brace it in two locations when you bend it. So now it won't come into the driver or the passenger, and it creates, and if you look, everything is triangulated. That's how everything has to be. Everything's got to be triangles to get energy going in the direction we want away from the driver. So this should be very, very nice cage. Street cage. It's not really legal for sanctioned body, but he did do a nice job on all the welding. Nothing too radical. The welds all look real good. See my crappy paint job? But it's primer. I'll sand it down. That's the one thing I'm not, is a painter. I think I'm going to take some of this out and try to repaint this as well and clean it all up. And just go from there. But Project White Fang is taking small steps towards getting it back on the road. I do like the wheels, I must say. They look very muscle carish in my opinion only. It is coilovers all the way around, which these are pretty stiff, so I don't know how long I'll ride with these. I'm a little concerned. The more and more I do this car, I'll tell you, the more things change. It's probably a good idea when you do a car to get it done in a hurry, because then you'll end up doing what I do and spending way too much time and money changing things and doing stuff long before you ever get it on the fucking road. So that's a big problem for me. The other big problem is spending too much money on a crappy car. Remember, cars are money pits, people, and I don't encourage anyone that doesn't have the finances to embark on such a thing. I've had a lot of comments from people. I've seen it in the comment section. I get asked a lot how to do this swap. Here's the deal. This car's far beyond streetable and being very, very comfortable, especially with these stiff-ass coilovers from Maximum Motorsport. It's down to manual steering, manual brakes. Don't know if there's going to be AC in the car. I don't think I'll have AC in the car. So now it's going to be like a Saturday night cruiser. Hopefully as stealth as I can get, but from the side, once the windows are tinted, which obviously needs to be changed, and it painted black, you might not see it too badly. But I wanted this whole project to be a sleeper. That's the purpose of this. I didn't get you to show you guys the shop that did this because he actually doesn't like doing roll cages for street cars. He believes it's a liability, and I understand. Driving around on the street with a roll cage is not ideal. Don't even know why I wanted one. It's just here I am, and this is what happens. It does look pretty sick though. I'm really, really happy with the way it turned out. I was a little concerned at first. I'm a little pissed that I lost my back seat, but this is the proper way to do a cage. You don't want any bent bars. Everything's straight. The only bend obviously is in the halo and at the door, but he's got it braced pretty good. So this should be pretty good. And the way he welded those up there, very nice, catching 2 points. He actually hated the subframe connectors I put on the car. So the Maximum Motorsport full length subframe connectors, he said, are junk. He's one guy. He was just giving his opinion. And you know, I'll take anybody's, I did get my chin spoiler on there too. I'll take anybody's opinion into consideration. He felt that through the floor subframe connectors would be a much better option for unibody cars, but with this bar coming down, it's greatly going to stiffen up the chassis. So now what's left is getting this motor in the car. I have too much crap obviously, but I have this transmission. All these parts only have 32,000 on them. Got some long tube headers. They're crappy, but for the time being, it might be worth it putting them on. I have my little bullet style. There's my dash, some extra components. I have way too much stuff. There's my little pipe M40s or whatever they're called, M80s, sorry. And I'll just run some dumps. But for the most part, this is where I'm at. This box right here is I talked about this a little bit. This is boxed up, being ready to send off to Kenny Brown. They are going to re-engineer and hard mount the IRS cradle that is now resides in that car. What's in that car is a 2004 Cobra IRS. What is here is the tubular control arms, which again, he didn't like. This guy happened to be a chassis builder for Carroll Shelby. He created the first frame, or helped create the first chassis for the Shelby Series 1, and he also created and helped weld up the prototype for the 2005-2006 GT from Ford. So he definitely knew a lot more than I did when it comes to building roll cages and chassis stiffening. And he certainly didn't like a lot of aftermarket parts. And this roll cage was not cheap. I don't recommend that to anybody. Way more costly than I anticipated. I was going to weld in one of those that you buy. Turns out he hated it. Hated it. Said the metal was junk. So what this is, and you never build a roll cage out of chromoly. That's just retarded unless you're going to use it once. This is all DOM. This is 1.5 inch, 120 wall. Actually, no, 0.95 wall. But he builds these for stock car and circle track cars all the time. This was not a cheap roll cage. Again, your buddy could weld one. You notice it's not tied down to the floor pan, sandwiched between. Reason being is, you get into a collision, this thing is just going to peel that floor pan up. And there's a lot of sanctioned bodies that allow it. But the real proper way to do it is to put it on a surface that lifts the car and moves with the car. This is hence why it is strapped in over there and strapped in right here and welded to the B pillar. The only downside about doing this is putting on my plastics back on. I'll have to cut it, but CJ Pony Parts did a nice tutorial on that. And God, I hope I'm in camera. If I'm not in camera, I apologize. CJ Pony Parts did a nice tutorial on cutting out your interior, piecing it back together, trying to keep it as stock as possible. Secondly is, again, I told you earlier in the video, I got very accustomed to driving around this 2005 Mustang, having a sound system that has the shaker, 500 I believe. I did change out the head unit to a Kenwood. It spoils you. I love having a stereo in a car again, not driving around. I mean, as much as the sound of the exhaust is nice, it's also nice to have a sound system that you can play your tunes and just kind of get lost in the drive. Aside from that, I'm not sure how much I want to put back in the car. Remember, the purpose of this originally was to get the car light, make it fun and fast and safe. This is a street car that I will take to the track, but at the same time, you want it to be a little comfortable. So I don't think I'm gonna put full on bucket racing seats. I shouldn't say bucket racing, not bucket racing. I don't think I'm gonna put unadjustable seats. I think I'll put some adjustable seats. I have the hardest time trying to figure out which ones I want. But once I get it all done, once I get the interior all set up, get the wiring back in the car and start getting this thing together, it needs an alignment, it needs all the suspension done. I mean, I'm probably still 2 months out. I get Saturdays only to work on this car. And the next 2 weekends, I won't get to work on it as well because I'm helping a friend. They're remodeling their kitchen, and the weekend after that, I'm out of town, and then I come back. So 3 weeks from now, I'll get to actually start on the car. And I know this is a long process, and luckily I have tons of patience. But anyway, for the most part, this is where we're at. This is where Project White Fang currently is. Thank you guys who watch the videos, all 160 of you, of my subscribers. Not that you need to subscribe. I mean, the purpose of this is just to put the information out onto YouTube. So if other people have questions like y'all have, and I try to answer as quickly as possible, you get the information, you get to make a decision. But again, if you're going to be doing a project or doing a swap, I've said this before, buy a GT from the get-go. Buy a Cobra from the get-go. Don't waste your money doing what I'm doing. The only cool thing about what I'm doing is it's all mine. I will have turned every nut and bolt, and I can say I've built the car from the ground up, all me. That has some merit, but truthfully, it's not financially, it's not fiscally responsible. It'd been much, much cheaper to go out and buy a $6,000 Cobra, throw a tubular K-member on it, change out the suspension over time. This is by far the most expensive way to do it. Unless you have a V6, you've done a lot to the car, you fall in love with the cars, have a way of doing that. We get connected with a car and we don't want to let it go. And you can find a wrecked GT that maybe was T-boned or where a lot of the wiring wasn't damaged, and you can pull the drivetrain and wiring over and swap it. So remember, 94 to 04, really 79 on up, you can do a lot of swapping. It starts to get a little tricky maybe with some of the wiring in the tail lights and stuff, but so many people now are swapping dashes into the Foxes that I've seen it done too many times to say it can't be done. I just didn't do it. I even found difficulties with just going from a 98 modular back to this chassis is the 302 or the V6 3.8. So some of the body panels, I shouldn't say body panels, the radiator support, some of the locations are a little different from the modular setup. But I've dealt with that accordingly. Aside from that, all chassis are the same from V6 inline 4 or V8. You can swap in. You may have to change a K-member, but the engine will fit. So that's where we're at. So once again, thank you. I'll post this video hopefully in the next day or so. It's now October 4th, 2016. And if I can get this done today, then you guys can start seeing this come together. And again, for 3 weeks now, I won't get to touch it again for 3 more weeks, but this is where I'm at. Finally back from getting the roll cage done. Now I'll start the painstaking process of putting it all back together and making it look as stock as possible. The other thing I want to say is I got some Raxium HID headlight kit. I'll tell you drive these newer cars too, and you actually get some real good light at night driving home. You can't go back to the old bulbs. It's too hard. So that kit will go in, so hopefully I have a lot better headlights and get this thing running. So once again, thanks everybody. This is the current status of Project White Fang.